The Tower Song. Rapunzel Reimagined. Chapter 1. The Stolen Child. In a kingdom nestled between rolling emerald hills and deep, whispering woods, there lived a couple who longed for a child. For years, they wished upon stars and prayed to the gods of the land. One evening, the wife stood by their small cottage window, gazing into the forbidden garden beyond their home. It belonged to the enchantress, a woman of great and terrible power. In that garden, flowers glowed with silver light, and vines pulsed with something almost alive. But what caught the woman's eye was a cluster of strange, leafy greens, Rapunzel, a rare herb said to cure all ailments. She had been feeling weak lately, a strange hunger growing within her. And though she knew the risk, she whispered to her husband, "Just one handful. The enchantress will never know." Desperation made fools of them both. That night, her husband crept into the garden and stole the Rapunzel. His wife devoured it, and to their joy, she grew strong again. But the hunger returned the next day, fiercer than before. So, the husband stole more. On the third night, as he reached for another handful, a shadow fell over him. "You dare steal from me?" The enchantress's voice was like the rustling of dead leaves, her eyes dark pools of fury. The man fell to his knees. "Please, forgive me. My wife, she is with child." The Rapunzel, it saved her. At this, the enchantress's expression shifted, something unreadable flickering behind her eyes. She placed a hand over his heart, and in that moment, he knew this was not mercy. "When the child is born," she murmured, "she will belong to me." The man's scream never left his lips. And so, when the baby girl was born, with hair like spun gold and eyes as bright as the summer sky, the enchantress came. She named the child Rapunzel. And then, she vanished into the night, taking the girl with her. Chapter 2. The Tower of Secrets. The enchantress raised Rapunzel in a tower hidden deep within the wildwood, where no mortal dared tread. The tower had no doors, only a single window at the very top. Rapunzel grew up believing the world was dangerous, filled with creatures that lurked beyond the trees, waiting to devour her. "The world is cruel, my dear," the enchantress would say, combing Rapunzel's endless golden hair. "Only I can keep you safe." And so, Rapunzel never questioned why she could not leave. But the tower was not silent. The stones whispered old stories. The wind sang through the cracks in the window. And sometimes, if she listened closely, she could hear something beyond the trees: laughter, music, life. And she wondered. Chapter 3. The Prince and the Song. Far beyond the wildwood, in the kingdom of Eldoria, there lived a young prince named Tristan. Unlike the rulers before him, he was restless, uninterested in courtly games and political marriages. He sought adventure. One day, while hunting near the wildwood, he strayed too far from his party. The trees thickened, swallowing the sunlight. His horse grew uneasy, and a strange hush settled over the land. And then, he heard it. A voice. It was like a river over smooth stones, like the first breath of spring. He followed the sound, pushing through the tangled vines, until he reached the base of a tower that had no door. High above, sitting on the window ledge, was a girl with hair like a golden waterfall, singing to the sky. She did not see him. But he could not look away. Chapter 4. A Dangerous Curiosity. Tristan returned to the tower every day, hiding within the trees. He watched as the enchantress arrived, calling out, "Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down your hair." Asterisk. And the girl would lower her long braid, allowing the enchantress to climb up like a serpent winding around a tree. Tristan marveled. How long had she been trapped there? Did she even know what lay beyond the forest? One evening, after the enchantress left, he stepped into the clearing. "Hello," he called, cautiously. Above, Rapunzel gasped, her eyes wide. Who are you?" He removed his cloak, revealing the royal crest. "I am Prince Tristan. And you have the most beautiful voice I've ever heard." She blushed, touching her lips as though realizing, for the first time, that someone had truly listened. "Are you real?" she whispered. Tristan chuckled. "I could ask you the same." And so, they spoke. That night, and many nights after. She told him of the stories in the stone, of the wind songs. He told her of the bustling streets, the festivals, the stars that stretched beyond her small window. And for the first time, Rapunzel dreamed of a world she had never known. Chapter 5: The First Taste of Freedom. One night, Tristan called up, "Let me climb to you." Rapunzel hesitated. She had only ever known the enchantress. To trust another was frightening. But her heart beat wildly at the thought. Taking a deep breath, she let down her hair. Tristan climbed, his hand steady against the silken strands. As he reached the top, he swung himself onto the ledge. For the first time, Rapunzel stood before someone other than the enchantress. They were only inches apart, and she could see the wonder in his eyes. "You're real," she whispered. "So are you." That night, for the first time, she touched something beyond the tower, Tristan's hand. And she knew she could never go back. Chapter 6: The Enchantress's Wrath. The enchantress was not blind. One evening, she arrived to find Rapunzel distracted, her cheeks flushed, her mind elsewhere. "You've been speaking to someone," the enchantress murmured. Rapunzel's stomach twisted. "No, mother." The enchantress's gaze darkened. And then, as though carried by the wind, a whisper reached her ears, Prince Tristan's name, spoken from the stones themselves. The enchantress's fury was terrible. "You dare betray me," she hissed. She grabbed a blade from her cloak and in one swift motion, she cut Rapunzel's hair. The golden strands fell like dying sunlight, severing her from the magic that had bound her to the tower. Before Rapunzel could react, the enchantress seized her wrist and whispered an incantation. Darkness swallowed her whole. Chapter 7: The Blind Prince and the Lost Girl. Tristan arrived at the tower, calling for Rapunzel. But when the braid was lowered, he climbed only to find the enchantress. She cursed him before he could flee. A terrible wind howled, and when it passed, the world was black. Tristan was blind. Stumbling, he fell from the tower, landing in the brambles below. Bleeding and lost, he wandered the wilderness, calling for the girl he could no longer see. Far away, Rapunzel awoke in a dark forest, alone and terrified. For the first time, she was free. But she had never been more lost. Chapter 8: The Reunion. For years, Tristan wandered. For years, Rapunzel survived. She learned the ways of the land, the language of birds, the healing touch of herbs. And when she sang, the trees listened, guiding her forward. Then, one fateful day, she found him. Blind, weak, but still calling her name. Tears filled her eyes as she ran to him. "Tristan!" At the sound of her voice, he stilled. "Rapunzel?" She took his face in her hands, pressing her forehead to his. And as her tears fell, something miraculous happened. His vision returned. She had healed him. They had found each other. And this time, they would not be parted. Chapter 9: A Kingdom's Heir. Rapunzel returned to Eldoria as a legend. The lost princess. The girl who had defied an enchantress. The woman who had healed a prince with her love. She and Tristan ruled side by side, their love stronger than any spell. And in the castle gardens, among the roses, Rapunzel planted a single vine of glowing Rapunzel. A reminder that even in darkness, life could bloom. And it did. The end.